Hey everybody, this is Tashia Butterfield. I am a social media educator, alpaca rancher, and crochet instructor. Today I'm going to share with you my alpaca story. It's very much intertwined with my crochet story, but I'm going to share that with you on a separate video. My alpaca story, it really starts back in 2009 as I was thinking through all the elements that have gotten me to this point. It started in 2009, but I'm going to start off in 2010 because that's when I started the crochet group that got me the job of teaching crochet at a local yarn store in Chicago, and that's where I was living at the time. This store was called Knit One. It was my first exposure to natural fibers. Up until this point, I had been crocheting for 8 years, and I'd only worked with acrylic yarns, which is basically like plastic yarns. But they're the most common yarns that you can find. Um, Usually from big box stores, and considering I had started my crochet life at a Michael's arts and crafts store, yeah, those were the stores that I always got my yarn from until I went into this local yarn store and I started teaching. I started learning about all of these natural fibers that the yarns came from that they had there in this store. This was really like a specialty store. So I started learning about all these animals that the yarns came from, right? So I kind of had this information kind of filed in my brain. Um, Kind of fascinated by the whole thing. I loved the environment of the store, sitting there amongst the yarn and the colors and the textures. Like, it was my happy place. Well, the summer of 2010, there was a fiber festival in one of the suburbs of Chicago. So some of my crochet friends and we took a day trip to go to this festival. Well, there they had some alpacas. It was my first time seeing an alpaca in real life. I had heard about them, I think I'd seen pictures of them, but I knew very little about them. It was my first time seeing them in real life, and I thought they were really neat, really fascinating creatures. In fact, in preparing for this video, I went back and I looked at pictures from this festival. Usually, well, it was really to remember when the festival was, but I noticed I had taken maybe only about a dozen photos of the entire event, and 2 of them were of alpacas. So that said, okay, I was fascinated even on that day about alpacas. Again, just kind of file the information in the back of my mind because it's not realistic to be able to do anything with them. I lived in the city, so it wasn't gonna happen. Well, this would be that fall. I was committed to go to South Korea to teach English for a year. Since I was going to be gone for a year, I took a little family vacation with my parents and my brother, a little time together before I left. And we ended up going to a family friend's cabin that was about 2 hours outside of Chicago. While we were there, I don't remember exactly how I found this place, but I found an alpaca farm. I don't know if it was like an advertisement or a magazine or something. Because, we were looking for stuff to do while we were there, and I ran across this, and I was super excited and convinced my family that we should go. So I called this place up. It was Willow Bend Alpaca Farms, which is now retired. They don't have alpacas anymore. They're retired from the industry. But we set up a time to go, and I remember being like an afternoon. And in fact, it must have been the day that we were leaving to go back to Chicago, because we go to this place and they had just gotten a few new alpacas that day, so they were in the barn and learning all about them. This specific place had the Wakaya breed of alpacas, which is actually my favorite breed. It's my preferred breed. But I met on that day the alpaca that I would eventually buy, my first purchase. That was her first day there. Anyway, I got to meet a bunch of alpacas because this place had about 100 of them, somewhere around 100. So different ages, sizes, colors, like the whole thing was really fascinating. And just kind of learning all the details about this animal, I realized is really suited to me. And being a city girl, you know, kind of surprising. But if you know me, okay, it's not really surprising because I'm someone, I do things that are outside of the box. I like to do things that other people are not doing. I don't take the well-paved path. I kind of blaze my own path in a totally different direction that other people haven't been. So the alpaca industry, it suits me, it fits me. Alpacas only came to the United States in the 80s. The industry itself is not very old. There's a lot of things that have been learned, and there's still a lot of things to learn. The industry has gone through a lot of changes because it's kind of like trying to figure out, you know, kind of its identity. And alpacas in the U.S. specifically, and amongst other fiber types within the textile industry. It fit me to be a part of that whole journey and figuring it out and finding my niche in it. And I already had an idea of the niche I want to be a part of because the whole fiber side of things. Alpacas are fiber animals. Even though there is a whole show side of the industry, alpacas are really fiber animals. The fiber, it's a luxury fiber. It's softer than cashmere and warmer than wool, and the animals are amazing to work with. Well, I discovered during this visit to Willow Bend that I became obsessed. That's really the way to say it. After this visit, I became absolutely obsessed. I remember this visit must have been on the day that we were heading back to Chicago because I got all this literature from the owner there. You know, I had talked a lot to her about what I was interested in, the things I was already involved in with crochet and all that. And she gave me a lot of things to read. Well, on the way home, I read everything. I mean, every single word of all the literature that she gave me. That's not normal for anybody, okay? So I could say I was obsessed. I went home and I did all the research I possibly could. I scoured the internet for any kind of information about these animals that I could possibly find. If you know me, I'm a pretty like even keel, balanced person in pretty much every area of my life. Every personality assessment type of thing I've ever taken, I pretty much like balanced like right in the middle, even on everything. This experience, totally not like that. It is not like me to be completely obsessed about something. I was not balanced at this time. I was totally out of my element. And that's why I knew, okay, yeah, this alpaca idea is radically different than anything I've ever done. You know, I grew up in the city. Obviously, there'd have to be a radical lifestyle change in order for me to pursue this. So the Lord knew I had to be completely obsessed with this in order to take the dramatic leap in a lifestyle to actually go after this thing. Yeah, so it was about 3 weeks. I'm thinking 3 weeks before I left the country that this happened. Within those 3 weeks, I visited 7 more alpaca places. Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, wherever I could find, wherever they would accommodate me coming to visit them. That's what I did. And I learned a lot about the industry, people having, you know, different perspectives of it. Some had Surrey, some had Wakaya, the 2 breeds of alpaca, different environments and scenarios of how they got into the industry, how they were taking care of their animals, their setup, and their approach to pretty much everything. I learned a great variety of approaches to this whole alpaca thing, which was, I mean, incredibly valuable. Well, it was enough to where just 1 week before I left the country, I bought my first alpaca. One of those alpacas that I met the day I went to Willow Bend. Yes, I met Joy, my sweet Joy. If you follow my alpaca, or not alpaca page, yeah, my alpaca page on Facebook. My Facebook page is what I meant to say. If you follow that, you've met Joy, or you will meet Joy, depending on when you're watching this, compared to her being the alpaca of the week. which is a series that I do. Okay, so Joy was pregnant and was due in about 2 months. So the deal was buying her and her Korea that was coming. All right, so I bought her and I paid to have her boarded while I was out of the country. And boarding your animals is normal in the industry. If you want to be a part of the industry, but you don't live in an environment where you personally can have them, you can pay for someone else to take care of them, and you can still be involved in their life and in the industry. Okay, so that's what I did for that time. I wanted to purchase her before I left because I wanted a tie to the industry. I wanted a reason to stay involved with this newfound passion that I had. I knew I was going halfway, literally halfway across the world. I was committed for a year. My contract was for a year, and I wanted to have that connection back home with what I knew was going to be my new life. So that's why I bought her before I left. All right, so in Korea, I start working on more research and my business plan. I was like, okay, now I know what I'm going to do when I get back from the States. I kind of had an idea before the whole Alpaca thing happened, and this totally blew that out of the water. I was not going to do that other idea anymore. I was totally taking a different direction. While in Korea, like I said, I'm working on my business plan. I'm deciding what niche I'm going to fit in, what approach I'm going to take, what business model I'm going to use for my business. And I started making connections with people that can be resources when I get back and when I'm actually doing this alpaca thing, okay? One of those connections was my friend Bobby in Kearney, Nebraska. And I reached out to her because I had already decided to have my alpaca place in Nebraska. When it came to deciding where I was going to do this, it really came down to two choices for me, and that was to move somewhere in rural Illinois so I could still be near my family and near all the connections that I had in the city, or come to South Central Nebraska. And that option came because this, where I am now, is where my dad's family is from. My dad was born in Kearney and he grew up not very far from where I live now. His dad is from here, and for generations past that, they lived in this area. So I had a strong family connection to a place, which I think was really neat. I'm someone who loves family history, family trees. I've done a lot of research of my family tree, so to be having the option to come to a place where I really have a family connection, that was meaningful to me. But then it came down to, okay, do I want to live in Nebraska or Illinois and start a business? Like, from a business perspective, which state gives me the best advantage? Okay. You can go do your own research comparing these two states. And then you tell me if I made the right choice or not. Because I'm pretty sure I did. But I decided to come to Nebraska. I contacted my great aunt who owns the family house that's in Nebraska. Her and her husband have been phenomenal supports of my whole adventure. They really got involved and they were integral into me being able to do this thing at all. Because I was able to stay in the family home. They came and helped me get established and helped with a lot of areas over these last 4 years. But that tells you again why I made the connection with Bobby in Kearney. Kearney's only an hour away from where I live, where I knew I wanted to settle. So she was like the homegrown contact. And she has alpacas. She has the wakayas. And she's been involved for a number of years. She has a lot of experience with alpacas and knows a lot of the other alpaca owners in the state too. Great resource. When I came back to the US, and I came back early from Korea for health issues, and I think because I just had this burning desire to do the alpaca thing. It's like, enough with the research. I want to live it out already. But, you know, health reasons were definitely a contributing factor. I was able to come back after only one semester. I will tell you about my Korean adventures in another video too, because that place has a special place in my heart now. But I came back the end of March 2012. Yes, end of March 2012. Okay. I came back knowing I had to get myself to Nebraska somehow. I had tried to do research while in Korea about places to live in Nebraska, and for the area that I wanted to be, that didn't happen. Being from Chicago, I'm used to everything being online. You know, there's specific places you go to look for a place to live. Everything is online. You can find anything. Okay, not so in the agricultural community that I was planning to move to. And I didn't know that. I just kept running up against dead ends while sitting in Korea halfway across the world trying to put some of these pieces together. So I realized I had to be here in order to make the right connections, which is why it was so important that I was able to stay in the family home, that there was a place for me to stay. So April of 2012 is when I first came to Nebraska with this intention. First night I stayed with Bobby up in Kearney, met her animals, her setup, kind of, you know, hearing more of her story and all that kind of thing. And she's been a great resource, great connection for me to have. So the next day I come down to Bloomington where the family house is and met my family and started doing what I could. Figured all those types of details. Returned to Chicago for just a couple of weeks. I attended some more shows while I was over in Chicago, alpaca shows, that is. More of that type of thing. Then I gathered all of my stuff with the intention of coming and staying in Nebraska. I was still packed from Korea because I was still living out of suitcases. So it was quite easy to just put stuff in my car and come to Nebraska. Then I became like an official resident and doing all these kinds of things. Well, I had already made a connection with a family friend, someone who had gone to school with my great aunt, someone who knew my great grandmother when she was alive during her later years, and you know, really had a soft spot in his heart for my great grandmother. She was a wonderful person. So because of those connections, he graciously took me in the sense of letting me use his land, a pasture he has with a barn on it that was primarily used for calving season. So by the time I came to Nebraska, it was right at the end of calving season. There was just maybe 3 or so cows left that hadn't calved yet. And otherwise, there was this large pasture with a barn that pretty much just sat there unused. So he graciously let me use that for my alpacas. Whew. Okay, see, God's putting all the pieces together, and every step of the way, God just took care of me. 2 weeks after I officially moved to Nebraska, I get this call from Bobby that another alpaca owner in the state is retiring from the alpaca life. Well, long story short with that, I got 12 alpacas from him. I didn't buy them. He gave them to me. He had so many and was on a time crunch that in the end, he gave me 8 girls and 4 boys. Yes, and that's of the Surrey breed. So now I had Surrey and Wakaya. Yes, and at this point, I'm trying to figure out how to get Joy and her baby out to where I live. Well, still worked on that for a while. Okay, so I have these 12 Surreys now. Oh, wow. Like every day now, I'm taking care of alpacas. I am really an alpaca rancher. Like my everyday life is going and taking care of them. And what was strange is that in this community I decided to live in, I was the alpaca expert. Okay, Bobby is an hour away. I think she might have been the closest alpaca owner to where I am. So no one in this close vicinity of the towns right around me, no one knows about alpacas in terms of like caring for them. And so all of a sudden I became the alpaca expert, strangely enough, but true. Okay, so Bobby had this great idea of her taking my boys and she took my boys and I took her girls. That way we didn't have to deal with the whole hormone issue. And I was having some challenges with the hormones because the way I was having to separate the boys and girls, there was not a great enough distance between them. So the boys were always trying to get to the girls and they were always excited and fighting and that kind of thing. And it was just unhealthy for them to always be like that heightened on all of their hormones, being like this all the time. Like that's not healthy for anybody, okay? So I thought she had a wonderful idea, and that's exactly what we did. So now I was taking care of a mixture of Surrey and Ukiah. And that's pretty much what I did for the next 3 years. Joy came at one point with her baby, and last year I got 4 other alpacas from Illinois, one of which has had a baby since. The first year that I had my alpacas, I did my own breeding. I got some babies from them. Over the years, some had died. It's the reality of livestock that you also have dead stock. At some point, they are going to pass away, and some are going to pass earlier than you expect, but that's the whole part of the reality. It's just how it is. Okay, so all of this time, I am looking for my own land because really, as wonderful as this land was I was able to use, it created some challenges. Well, first of all, it wasn't my land. I couldn't make adjustments to it as I wanted because, they still used it for a season of the year. It was designed for what they built it for. They actually built and designed a lot of that specifically for their cattle. It was not my place to be changing stuff up and making it for alpacas. Okay, so the challenge was that all these girls and their babies had to all be one group. When you are breeding, there are times that you need to split up the group. It could be for weaning, it could be different dietary needs, it could be a lot of things. It's helpful to have the option to split them up. I could only to a certain extent. Okay, so, but in reality, no. Like, no long term, no. Okay? I knew I had to have my own land. And for me to do that business plan that I had created back in Korea, I needed my own land. All right, so all this time, I was still looking. I was really still looking. This community that I live in, it's big agriculture. Big in the sense of like everyone has some role in agriculture. And I could go into the history of why this is so, but there are not small farmstead type places. A lot of the land is bought up by, same couple handfuls of people. So you have large acreages together. I'm talking like whole sections of land. Was it like 160 acres at a time? If I wanted large acreage, if I wanted to go buy a section, that is a lot easier to do here than smaller acreages, which is what I actually needed for the alpacas. I honestly don't need that much land. Don't need anything near, 160, 320 acres. I'm not even sure how much a section is in acreages. But anyway, That's irrelevant. The point is I don't need that much. I don't need to be spending $1 million on land that's easier to get than, say, 20, 40 acres. Okay, so that was the challenge of finding land here. The size that I needed is hard to come by. And the ones that do exist, people are really holding on to because they're hard to come by. So this whole journey has definitely been a faith experience. Knowing this alpaca thing, it suits me. It wasn't really my idea. You know, God led me to it and He's guided me every step of the way. That I know Him and I are in this business together because I could not have pulled this off on my own. Seriously. I probably would not even have come up with the idea of it on my own. But I've really, really enjoyed the whole thing. I mean, I wouldn't trade it at all, even with all of the challenges that I've had. Okay, so getting back to the land. This is what has happened. Last fall, the week of Thanksgiving, finally closed on a property. I lived here for 3 years, been looking for longer than that, obviously, because I looked before I even moved here, but finally found what I'd been looking for. It was almost perfect. Almost perfect. You know, I'd had this idea in my mind of my ideal setup, what elements it had to have and things like that. Okay, this property has everything on my list except a house. I really wanted a house on it. I wanted to live where the alpacas were. I live in a little town. I never meant to live in a little town. That was not part of the plan. And I don't want to live in a little town. I am because those were the doors that opened and I'm just enjoying the journey as it is. Okay, the alpacas have a home. That was primary. You know, I can always put a house there later. And that is the plan at this point, to put a house there later. But the size of the land, which is 42 acres, the setup, the barn, the condition of the land, the condition of the barn, it was designed for horses, so there's stalls inside that are open, that are ideal for alpacas, as opposed to some other livestock that are around here. You know, if it had been designed for cattle, it would have been a lot different and not so much ideal for alpacas. But for horses, alpacas, same barn, that goes good for me. Okay, this one in particular, very good. So I'm extremely, extremely grateful for this property. It's a dream. And you can come out anytime and see it. It's always there. I feed them every day. You can come and visit. Okay, so what happened was the Monday before Thanksgiving is when we closed on the property. I say we because my parents were here at that time and they were part of the whole experience. Okay, so close on the property in the morning, go and work at the property doing fencing and cleaning up some stuff. So it's prepared for the girls because at this point I still only have the girls. By sunset, all the girls were at the new property. Now I didn't expect it to happen that fast, like same day. But let me tell you, I was excited to get going on this next phase of the journey already, okay? So that's how it happened. And the mentality is whatever they need to get through the winter. You know, it was so late in the year, you couldn't do a lot of improvements to the property, to the land, that kind of thing. So it was like, okay, just what is necessary to get them through the winter. That's what we focused on. That's why, you know, just a little bit of fencing and that kind of thing happened. All right, even though I have a larger plan of breaking up different pastures and having a barn for the boys and even an extended plan, which you can hear about some other time. But, yeah, now winter is over. It's actually spring. It's definitely spring weather. So I'm working on moving forward with that plan of fencing and the boys' barn and having the boys here. They'll more likely be here in June. So like come summer, the boys will be here. All the boys will be here. Or all the alpacas will be here. And then I can get going on breedings Might still try to do some of that this spring, if not definitely in the fall, right? What else? I have my first open house coming up in just a couple of weeks. So the property is, it is what it is. There's still some things I want to do in the next couple weeks to make it look nicer, better. But I'm going to have an open house every spring and fall, and each time it's going to look better and better. But like with any business, you start where you are and you take one step at a time, and eventually it looks drastically different and so much better, right? It grows, your business grows. That's the whole idea. Okay, so now I'm in position to really do my business plan, and I just got to take that one step at a time. If ever you are in the Alma, Franklin area, South Central Nebraska, make sure to look me up. Come and visit the ranch. Follow the Facebook page. So say the alpaca page. I meant to say Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Butterfield Alpaca Ranch. So follow that, see what's going on. I run different series every week. Like I have an alpaca of the week. I show a video of that alpaca, and I do fun facts on Fridays, so you can learn more about them as well. Okay, so thank you so much for sticking with me this far and listening to the whole story. I hope it wasn't too long, and I hope you had a really good time. So I'll see you later. Bye.